all get pens? Yes, we're good? Okay. Time is, oh, it's 6:59.
Good timing.
Whoops. I guess we are 7 o'clock. I have my, yes. Well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see the place spread out. My name's Dave Milner. I'm the current president of the Fort Nelson District Chamber of Commerce. I will be your moderator this evening. I will call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. So welcome to the Fort Nelson District Chamber of Commerce All Candidates meeting. Oh, this is what I just said. I will act as your moderator this evening. I would like to thank the candidates for their participation. With us we have Dan Davies, to my left, your right, for the BC Liberal Party, and Trevor Bolin for the BC Conservative Party, to my right. Daniel Monroe with the NDP was unable to join us this evening. Things may look a little different this year as we meet provincial COVID-19 guidelines. Masks are available at the front in the lobby, along with hand sanitizers. If you are unable to maintain physical distancing, we ask that you wear a mask. Please be advised that we are live streaming this event, and it will be shared on a publicly accessible website. We could all wave to everybody and say hi. Okay. We would like to thank the BC Northern Real Estate Board, Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, the Phoenix Theatre, and Fort Nelson News for helping sponsor this event. We will be using an online question platform for those of you in the audience who do not want to use a microphone, and for those of you attending virtually. There are no download requirements. Simply open a browser on your laptop or iPad or phone and go to www.slido.com. That's SLIDO.com. SLIDO.com. I have just done it and it's very simple. Enter event number, okay? 96895. I'll repeat that. 96895. Onto the screen, and you'll be there and you can see the questions and you can ask questions. Very simple. Enter your questions or vote on existing questions. Questions will be removed if they are deemed inappropriate, offensive, or derogatory, or if they attack the integrity of the candidate or the Chamber of Commerce. In addition to the above, we ask that you please turn off or turn your phone to vibrate only. If you must take or place a call, please go out into the lobby. The order for speaking was determined by a random number on my phone, and Mr. Davies will be speaking first, followed by Mr. Bolin. Closing statements will be made in the reverse order. Each candidate will be allotted 4 minutes to make an opening statement. 4 minutes. Candidates are asked not to interrupt other candidates, unlike President Trump, opening or closing statements. The moderator will have the responsibility of ensuring that questions are directed to the appropriate candidate. If necessary, questions will be directed by the moderator to the other candidate to ensure balance. We ask that those of you in attendance to use the microphones to ensure their question is captured in the live stream. We ask that participants ask questions only. The moderator will rule out of order any person who attempts to use this meeting as a platform for expressing their point of view. You should have volunteered to be in the election if you want to express an opinion. Please follow physical distancing guidelines at the microphones using the spots marked on the floor. Please wait for the microphone to be disinfected before stepping up to it. We have people that will wipe down the microphones after you use them. Candidates will limit their answers to 2 minutes to ensure as wide a discussion as possible. Candidates will be allowed 4 minutes for closing statements. Due to COVID-19 requirements, we will not have candidates moving to the podium, but they will each speak from their respective seats. The order, as I said, will be Mr. Davies, Dan Davies, and Trevor Bolin. We can begin now, so I will call on Mr. Davies to say his thing.
Great. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking the Chamber, Bev and Dave, for your getting this together tonight. All the sponsors as well that have made this a possibility. Delighted to be here with you tonight. My name is Dan Davies. I'm the BC Liberal candidate running here for Peace River North and Northern Rockies. This election is about who can best represent this riding, who can best represent and deliver results for the residents of Fort Nelson. My experience as your former MLA, as a city councillor, a father, industry worker for 20 years, equipped me, along with my team, the BC Liberals, to deliver on those results. Excuse me. Over the past 3 years as your MLA, I've made it a priority to represent and engage this community. Opening my MLA constituency office was not only one of my 2017 campaign promises, but it was absolutely something that Fort Nelson needed and the residents of the neighboring area needed. I've been pleased to meet with many of you actually sitting here tonight in the audience in my office, as well as many others throughout Northern Rockies, and I look forward to continuing to serve you as well. There are many things that stand out to me over my last three and a half years coming up here as your MLA, and then many years before that working with the cadet program up here in Fort Nelson. One of the things, though, I have noticed up here is the hardworking people that live here and the resilience of people that live here in Northern Rockies. People that just want to raise a family, people that just want to go to work, people that want to care for their community and volunteer for their community. And every one of you here tonight, I know that you play a role in making your community a better place. And it's those little things that makes me want to be your MLA, and is why I'm running to be reelected as the MLA for Peace River North and Northern Rockies. I'm talking to the converted here tonight. We all understand that rural British Columbia is the backbone of BC. We know that. We face some very unique challenges. And again, I'm talking to a group of people here that have faced some of the biggest challenges in the last decade and a bit. One of the things that we need to do and we need to keep bringing up, and that I've continued to bring up, is the representation in Victoria, to make sure that Victoria knows where Fort Nelson is, to make sure that Victoria knows the issues and the concerns of Fort Nelson residents. Many people here tonight, as well as watching, know that the letters, the phone calls, the meetings I've had with you, it is an ongoing thing to make sure that Victoria knows that Fort Nelson is here. And we have had many successes, but we still have work to do. I said this last night at the debate in Fort St. John, and I'll say it again. Every single time that I've had the opportunity to speak at a debate, present a bill, budget responses, I've always started with how proud I am to represent one of the most diverse ridings in the province of BC, and that is Peace River North and Northern Rockies. I'm committed to working hard to getting good paying jobs, making sure that our kids can stay here. And this is something that we've seen. Our kids have to leave to get work. Our spouses may have to leave to get work. And that is a goal of mine, to make sure that we can keep people here in Fort Nelson with good paying, family supporting jobs. I am committed to standing up for the forest industry, the natural gas sectors, agriculture, and tourism. Over these past 3 years, I have been advocating lots with local people here in Fort Nelson, as well as industry. We are hopeful. There has been some work recently that is looking very hopeful for getting a pellet plant here in Fort Nelson, and we're very hopeful that that does go forward. Natural gas as well. We have a small LNG plant moving, and those are great things that we're all looking forward to. So again, this is the foundation of our plan. A strong economy makes strong families. I look forward to your support on October 24th. Thank you. You sure that was 4 minutes, eh?
It was.
Not just your phone going off?
Santa Claus.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you, everybody online who's watching, as well as everybody here at the, in the theater with us. My name is Trevor Bolin. I'm the leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia. I'm going to let you know a little bit about me more on the personal side, as some of you, I mean, some of you do know who I am, but a lot of you may not. My family moved into the region in 1926. We came for the farming, of course, as all families did in those eras. We stayed for the oil, we stayed for the gas, we stayed for the forestry. We're now staying for the business, and we're staying because we've put our roots down, and we absolutely love what this region, all the communities in this region, bring to our families. My boys now are fifth generation growing up in Fort St. John, and I say Fort St. John because that's where our home is, but I grew up all throughout the region. I grew up on drilling rigs, both in this area as well as north of this area. My great-grandma actually lived at mile 136 up until she ended up moving down south. So from Charlie Lake or the fields in Rose Prairie or the drilling rigs north of Fort Nelson, this is home, and it's always been home. I've been on city council in Fort St. John for over 12 years. It's 12 years of my life that I thoroughly enjoy and am absolutely passionate about. I ran for council when I was 28 years old. At that point in time, I was one of the youngest elected councillors in the province of British Columbia. And people always ask me why I did it. Why would you do it at 28 years old? I owned successful businesses. I was a successful businessman in Fort St. John and the surrounding area. But it was my way to give back. It was my way to make a difference. It was my way to be able to listen to people and help to ensure that I could champion what their needs, their wants, and their desires are. The question's no different as to why I ran for leadership of the Conservative Party of British Columbia. And I often get asked why I did it and why I would throw a party that had been not only not around for years, but previously was a major force in this province. And the answer I found was the exact same. It was to be able to represent people. It was to be able to ensure that they were heard, their families were taken care of. And what I do on a council side in Fort St. John became seeing infrastructure falling apart in the farming communities north of town, or it's seeing places like Fort Nelson, Northern Rockies, and the region that have been in a tough shape for too long. And to me, there needs to be something that can be done. There needs to be some championing that can be done to bring back the jobs that were at one time here. I was fortunate enough to be in Fort Nelson and in the Northern Rockies last month and stayed and got to shop in some of your stores and your health food store and some of your gas stations and talk to some of the folks that were here and partake in a lot of the social media forums that are on for some of your local social media groups as far as the area goes, and hearing the concerns are no different than we have. I'm a business owner, still to this day a business owner, and I employ upwards of 150 people. So I know the struggles business owners go through in any market. I know the struggles that people go through because I hear it from my staff all the time, and my stores are not only in Fort St. John, they're also in other parts of BC. And it resonates with me. It resonates with me that they feel they don't have the opportunity to be heard, to ensure that somebody is there for them. So my run at council in the 12 years that I've been there, and I'm still currently there, or being here in front of you tonight, whether it's live audience or media, that's my passion. My passion is people, my passion is representing people, and my passion is listening first before I try to come up with a solution that I feel best works for them, because oftentimes it doesn't. So thank you for having me. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our moderator tonight. And of course, everybody who helped make this happen. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Trevor. All right. 16 seconds to spare. All right. We will now open the floor to questions. So it's a little bright up here. Stop. Do I see someone at a microphone over here? Sorry.
Good evening. First off, I just want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 8 territory, traditional territory of the Fort Nelson First Nation. It seemed to have been missed by the three fellows gentlemen on the stage. And my question is directed to Mr. Bolin. So 5 generations of your family have benefited from the Treaty 8 arrangement. because to live together in peace and share the land. So your family has benefited for 5 generations. So my question is directed to you. So the Liberals have been in power from the last 16 of the 19 years. And there's actually, I've just got this here so I don't lose track of what I'm doing. So there's a study done by the Northern Rockies Regional Economic Strategy. So post-2016, so this is before the NDP got into power. The population is a decline, the school population was lost, there's the household incomes are dropping, declining number of businesses, shrinking supply chain, forestry closed, oil and gas investment outflows, decommissioning, and also you can add what's happened with our health system for the last in that time period, and also ICB, what has happened. So the priorities, Mr. Bolin, are sustainable jobs, healthy communities, household incomes, attract a workforce, attract new businesses, and attract residents. So Mr. Bolin, I don't know anything about you, so I would appreciate you answering those questions. Merci, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the reminder of the traditional lands that we're on. I actually did have it written down, and I missed it. It was a little bright to see what I was trying to look at. Your points are 100% valid, and you know what? I've been fortunate to know some business owners that are here in Fort Nelson and in the community, and it's helped me keep a pulse on what's happening. And I know that's why I mentioned it has been going on for too long. It hasn't been just this election or even the election before that. I grew up, as I said, in and around this area. I grew up on drilling rigs, on platforms. Fort Nelson was booming. The people were coming. And Fort St. John was very similar because we do have a lot of similarities between the two communities. But we need to ensure that Fort Nelson and this area is championed for, because if it's not, then nobody's going to pay attention. And that's what we found in Fort St. John. And I think part and parcel of that was what you've seen happen in Fort Nelson. When you drive through the downtown of Fort Nelson, you see buildings that were built a few years ago, and you see buildings that were built 15 years ago. And again, it's no different whether you're in Fort St. John or Dawson Creek or any of the rural communities. But we need to ensure that companies know, we need to ensure that the province knows, we need to ensure that people know what Fort Nelson has to offer and what this area has to offer. And I've done that in Fort St. John for a large amount of years, and we've always championed for business and for jobs and for economy. And part of my moving beyond city council was to be able to do that for other areas of this same riding. And whatever that's going to take in order to be heard is what I'm willing to do, because that is my job. And that's my job no matter what happens. Is I love this community. I love this region. I love this riding. This will always be my home. My heart will always be here. It absolutely breaks my heart to see the posts that I see from residents in this area with the concerns that they have. One recently was the fact of the health care. We have issues in Fort St. John. I mean, there's issues everywhere, but I think the issues that are here are very singular and not the same in other communities. So we need to take those issues that I think can be looked at and can be looked at easier than as a whole and start dealing with these individual issues. And when you start dealing with individual issues at a time, you're going to be able to deal with the absolute issue, which is getting Fort Nelson back where it needs to be. So I thank you. I thank you for the reminder, and I thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Davies.
Yes, thank you for that. And you know, I think anybody that knows me knows how I've been a fierce advocate for Fort Nelson. In 2017, I remember being on this stage, committing myself to the residents of Fort Nelson that I would work tirelessly on forest issues. I'd work tirelessly on the natural gas industry. I would work tirelessly on improving healthcare and education. I have been doing that continuously. One of my arguing points, and if you go back through the debates that I've been on, again, multiple times in the legislature, there isn't a time when I do not bring up the issues that face the residents of Fort Nelson. Healthcare is number one, I think, up here that we've all experienced. And it is something that we need to make sure that we are fighting for. You know, we understand that there's not going to be a surgical unit and specialists all over, but we need access. And we should have access. And we've been hearing stories just recently where we cannot get people out of Fort Nelson to the medical care that we need, and that's not on. So these are things that I've been working for and I will continue to advocate for. I've worked with the industry sector in forestry, meeting with, I know the mayor, he's been a fierce advocate as well, working for the residents of Fort Nelson to try and bring some forest opportunities to Fort Nelson, some natural gas opportunities to Fort Nelson. We need to continue to fight for that. Again, there is some positive news on the horizon. I'm extremely excited about that, to see it come to fruition. But it is taking work, and it's going to be looking at how do we improve the policies that are out there right now to make things work. And in the forestry world, I've talked to Len Peterson a lot. Whether I like it or not, he reaches out to me all the time. People in this room tonight, we talk about how can we make forestry better. We know that the stumpage system is broke. We know that the regulation piece is broke. So we got to fix that, and I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. All right. I think we'll take another one from the floor. If, Mr. Irwin, are you?
I'm ready.
There you go.
There you go.
You have the floor.
Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. Bolin, I've already talked to Dan. Dan and I have spoken on more than one occasion. I'll address both of you. I've been voting since 1979. I've voted in every election, federal, provincial. I've lived in Ontario. I've lived in BC. I'm what you call a disenfranchised voter. I've seen everything and anything in the way of scandals. I don't see parties working together. I've challenged the Premier to come up here to see what's happened to Fort Nelson. I'll address it to you, Mr. Bolin. I'm looking for a leader who's a Winston Churchill. I'm not looking for a Neville Chamberlain. I'm looking for a leader who's going to stand with us in bad times, who's going to come up here and have a cup of coffee with the guy on the street. Dan, I don't know anything about Mr. Wilkinson. Is he going to be that sort of leader once he gets into power as Premier? And Mr. Bolin, would you be that sort of leader who's going to come up here and stand with us in bad times, talk to people? Because, I don't see it currently from Victoria. It makes me wonder why I'm paying provincial taxes at this time. Thank you very much, both of you.
First.
Thank you, and that's a very legitimate concern, and it's a very legitimate complaint, and I think we're hearing it more often, and that's part of the issue that got me involved and got me where I am. I don't like to fly. I don't like to go places. I don't like to go island hop or go on these fantastic holidays. I like to get in my motorhome and take my boys, and I like to come north. Whether it's Fort Nelson, Northern Rockies, Watson Lake, Whitehorse, that's my kind of holiday. Our region is all I need. I don't need anything more than that. Currently, with what's going on with COVID, to be able to get in my truck and come up here is what I like. I spend a majority, probably 99% of my time in our ridings as it is. I love this area, and coming up here, being able to hear your concerns and ensuring that they're shared somewhere else, yes, I'm that guy. And I will do that for you, and that would be my commitment, is to ensure that you are never forgotten about and you never feel like the leader of a party doesn't care, because I do. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and appreciate the question. I'm not any Winston Churchill, I don't think, but I don't think I'm a Neville as well. I do like cigars and the odd scotch, but your question is a good one, though. Most of you know me. I come up here often. I meet with people regularly. Andrew Wilkinson, that is one thing that I have heard. Who is he? And as opposition, and we see this in the federal government as well, opposition's always trying to get the table scraps of media to follow them. And it's hard to raise profile when the media only follows the leaders of government. So whether it's the premier of our province or the prime minister federally. So we are always trying to get in front of the camera to try and get our leader out in front of people, which we have seen recently, because during the election, the media must pay equal attention to both the candidates. As far as who Andrew is, I only met Andrew 3 years ago when I got elected. I've come to know him obviously quite well. He is a rural doctor. In fact, he practiced up in Dease Lake. He's been all over British Columbia. He has been, and he's an immigrant, so he's been, he came here with his family with nothing and built himself up with his own work and his own sweat equity to put himself through university, to become a doctor, and a lawyer he actually did as well. He travels around the province as the leader. He's been up to Fort St. John. I will take full blame. He was supposed to come here to Fort Nelson, but it was right at the same time that I got myself in front of a loader and ended up getting squished and broke my back. So I accept responsibility for not getting Andrew up here. We've tried to get him up here, though, a couple times, and it just doesn't work. But Andrew is well aware of the issues here. I talk to him weekly, and we bring the issues from Fort Nelson to Andrew. Andrew has mentioned Fort Nelson often in his debates. He talks about rural BC. He has a deep understanding that rural BC is the engine that provides everything that little bubble in Vancouver and Victoria need. And he's very aware of that, and that's why he's focused a lot on rural BC. That's why he's focused a lot on the energy sector, forestry, agriculture, and tourism. He understands that, and honestly, he is absolutely committed to making BC better for everyone.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. I think I will move to the questions on the board. So we will go in order of how many people are liking the questions. So this is from Kathy. For MLA Davies and Trevor Bolin, please comment on how vote splitting between both parties could lead to another NDP win in this election. Mr. Davies first.
Yeah, thanks. And, this is probably the one question that has come up over and over again every single day during this campaign. Vote splitting is real. It's absolutely 100% real, and this question came up last night as well. We just have to go back to 2017. 2017, the election was very close in two ridings, Maple Ridge Mission and Courtenay-Comox. And I'll just give you the quick numbers here. Courtenay-Comox, the BC Liberals had 36.7% of the vote. The Conservatives had 7.5%. The NDP had 37%. So there was only 1% dividing the BC NDP and the BC Liberal Party. The race was between the BC Liberal Party and the BC NDP. And the Conservatives, with their 7%, split away, and because we are right of center, as the Conservatives are right, that split away from our vote and gave it over to the NDP. We saw the exact same unravel in Maple Ridge Mission. Percentages were very similar. We've seen this in the past. This isn't the first time. Many of you know your former mayor of Fort Nelson, Richard Neufeld, later Conservative senator. He admits one of his biggest mistakes he ever made was run for the Reform Party of British Columbia. Because by running that Reform Party, and they ran in almost every riding, they split the right, and the NDP got a second term in 1996. And we know in the 1990s that capped off a very dark period of British Columbia. That was a very dark period for anybody who had business, or anybody who had anything in this province, because industry left. People were unemployed. So these are the worries that we have on a broad spectrum, on a big picture. So it is a real thing. Mr. Bolin has 22% of the ridings represented. He's got 19 candidates running out of 87. I've met all 87 of our candidates. They are all stellar people. They are hardworking, and they have a chance to win in many of the ridings across the province. So it is a real thing, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Not to correct you, but I think you're at 86 now because one left today, so there's 86 candidates. The BC Liberals will, of course, tell you that it was our fault that they lost the election in 2017 over the ridings of Courtenay and Comox. They won't tell you that there was actually 8 ridings that they lost to the NDP because obviously people, without us being involved, decided to vote for a different party, different candidates. So is vote splitting real? It is, and it happens all the time. We see it happening in many different types of elections. When I became the leader of the Conservative Party, the reason I did that was because I wanted the ability to ensure there was a party that had a platform that was made by British Columbians, that was voted for in British Columbia, that represented us all. It wasn't about party lines. It wasn't about ensuring that Your candidates had to run it by the party before the party would ever do anything about it. We wanted to have a party that allowed a free vote. It was a vote that no matter what it was, that candidate of that riding, that MLA, could bring that forward for change. Because if it meant enough to them to deal with it, it meant enough to us. So it wasn't about splitting of a vote. It wasn't about center to right or right. It was about a party that could truly represent people. And that is why I got involved. That is why I got involved in ensuring the platform was written by me, voted on by British Columbians in British Columbia, that was about representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the crowd at this point in time? Ms. Dickey.
Thank you. Do we have to wait turn to let other people go first?
Nope.
No?
You're
Okay,
welcome.
Okay. Question for Mr. Davies. So you said, you referred to this area a few times as the engine, as the backbone. But explain to me how the Liberal government, 16 of the last 19 years, so they were in power. They had a majority government, they were in power. They made the rules, the regulations. And prior to 2016, our economy was broken because of the Liberal policies. So now you're saying, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. How are you going to fix it? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's important to, first of all, we need to recognize that was, a lot of those policies started in 2001, 20 years ago. I think there was a lot of consequences that weren't seen about some of those policies going forward. And, we've seen issues from those. Now, a lot of it was also market driven. There were some market issues, market turned down in the forest industry. There was issues with the softwood lumber agreement. We've seen this recently. In fact, we still don't have a softwood lumber agreement for us. The natural resources, natural gas, oil, has had its ups and downs. So there's been challenges as well with that. I'm not arguing that there were some bad policies made. Absolutely there was. And I think those are decisions that have been or are being discussed to be corrected. Like I say, we've already talked about stumpage fees, looking at how we can change those, to be more reflective of the market that changes quickly. I've been working with a number of folks here in Fort Nelson, working with the Assistant Deputy Minister for the North for Forest Operations on getting the pricing, not out of Fort St. John, but out of Fort Nelson. So something where the stumpage fee is more reflective to what they are here in Fort Nelson. All we can do right now is work forward. And I think that is the most important thing for all of us here in Fort Nelson, is to be looking forward and to working on best policies that we can bring to the table and get people working, get some of our families that are living elsewhere back here into Fort Nelson. And that is what I have committed to doing in 2017, and that is what I'm still committed to do after this election.
Thank you. It was directed just at Mr. Davies?
No, but
Okay.
I directed to him, but he answered too, so I guess they
All right.
only fair.
Sir.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. I'm going to give you an example, and this is something that we've dealt with currently. Forestry, for an example, is a stumpage issue. It is an issue that we have not corrected or has not been corrected in British Columbia for a long time. If you look just across the border to Alberta, in some of Jason Kenney's recent reports about how well forestry is doing there, it is doing phenomenal. If you look at the pricing of lumber right now, the pricing of lumber is the highest it's been that any of us can probably remember. That's going to have a detrimental effect on construction, building houses, renovations, and that's going to start to hurt people because we don't have the supplies we have. Stumpage needs to be fixed. Second thing is, we have an OSB mill in Fort St. John. I was part of the committee that got that OSB mill going forward and approved with Ike Barber at that point in time, many, many years ago, because I knew how important those jobs were. They closed that mill. When that mill was built, we were told at that point in time it was the most energy efficient, cost efficient mill in North America, and every other mill would close before this one ever had a problem. Guess what? We were one of the first ones to close. I phoned up LP in Nashville, and I asked them why they aren't shipping that finished product out of BC ports. There was no answer. There was a pause. There was nothing. the idea had never even been presented to them of the opportunities we have to ensure that we're selling finished products from our markets, from our ports to other parts of the country. And that's what needs to change. We can't just say that it's market driven. We need to ensure that we can be the contact point and the champion to get these products over and out. We need to ensure we get the stumpage fees down so that we're at least can compare to what Alberta is doing right now with the same amount of product that we have. So yeah, no, there's some changes that need to be made. They should have been made a long time ago. But you know what? The next best time to do it is today. Thank you.
Anyone at a microphone? I see someone moving. No? Okay. So we shall return to the questions online. Once I remember my password. All right. Our good friend Anonymous has asked a question. This question is directed to Mr. Bolin. Can the BC Conservatives form government and actually make changes in Victoria?
Great question. So during my opening, I let you know that I've been the leader of the party for a year. I am extremely proud of the 19 quality local candidates that we have running in the 87 ridings across British Columbia. I had more than 60 people apply to be candidates in this election. We took the route of a very vigorous vetting process to ensure that those who shared our brand, shared our values, and represented their communities. Henceforth, why the NDP candidate's not here right now. She's in Victoria because that's where she lives. That's not what we wanted. We wanted to ensure that it was local people who shop where you shop, who go to school, their kids go to school where your kids go to school, and that is why we have 19. Can we form government? No. Can we make change in government? Did you ever think the Greens would with only 3 seats? Because they surely did in the last 3.5 years, didn't they? So yeah, you know what? We can make change. You don't need to have a majority government to be heard. And I think that's what the big parties forget, is that everybody works towards these majority governments. But at the end of the day, it's about who can actually provide the facts, who can actually provide the information that's needed to make a decision. It is negotiations 101. And I do know a lot about negotiations, and I'm proud of that. And that's something that I'm able to use when I'm representing communities like Fort Nelson. So thanks for the question.
And just to follow up on that, the answer is no, a very clear no, certainly with 19 candidates where you need 45 to form government. In the present form, the BC Conservatives cannot even form opposition. And I think it's important to understand, after this election on next Saturday, I will either be in government, which is what I'm hopeful for, or I'll be in opposition. Both of those come with a lot of benefit. Government, obviously, we understand the benefits of government. But being in opposition is the ability to sit on committees. The ability to sit on committees that make change in the province. The ability to debate bills and have questions in question period. The ability to influence change, arrange ministers, have critic roles. Those are all things that are in opposition's hands, which are all very important. Just want to touch really briefly on the Green Party. You know, after the 2017 election, we know that the NDP came to government by combining with the 3 Green Party members. Now one is gone. If you were to talk to, and Sonia Firstino has said this quite regularly, especially after John Horgan ripped up the contract between the two, that it was the worst mistake they ever made because they got nothing. The Green Party got nothing out of their 3.5-year arrangement. And I think, you know, that is one thing to keep in mind. It was to prop up the NDP. They thought it would have some benefit. They got one private member's bill introduced in the 3.5 years that Andrew Weaver got introduced. That was the only benefit that they had, other than they got the chance to see legislation before it was presented. So whether you like it or not, you know, it is pretty hard when the NDP across the country get about 40% of the vote. BC is no different. When you start dividing the right side of the spectrum up, you start whittling down to where the NDP will always win. And that's exactly what happened in 1996. That's exactly what happened in 2001 when the Reform Party, the Conservatives, the Social Credit Party, and the BC Liberals all formed under one umbrella to finally become government, to finally take British Columbia from the worst economy in the country to the best economy in the country in 2016.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Questions from the floor? Mr. Wall?
This is directed towards Mr. Bolin. Can you clearly define what sets you apart from the Liberal candidate party as a whole? What sets the Conservatives apart from the Liberals so that it's easily understood by anybody that's not very politically versed?
For sure I can, and that's a really good question. So, I mean, yeah, besides the name, because we all kind of shoot towards the same thing, but there's a few fundamentals that make us separate. I mentioned one earlier, which is the fact that we allow our MLAs to have a free voice. It is not going to the party. It is a free 100% voice to represent their constituents. Number two is the BC Liberals rolled out carbon tax. The NDP at that point in time championed against it, but then kept it and tried increasing it, and will continue to try increasing it. I have never, and the party has never been in favor of carbon tax. I have never been in favor of keeping ICBC, neither is the party. In 2018, the party's official policy at that point in time was to scrap the monopoly on ICBC and allow it to be an open market. That is something that has always resonated with me. I have a sister that runs an insurance company, so I hear on her side of things as well. So besides the fact that we're grassroots, that we're an old party that's been revived with new platforms and new policies around representation and around the voting that our candidates can do and not having to go to a party or an executive or a membership, it is about change on the ground. If a member of this community or many members of this community wanted to become members to actually change our policies and do it on a very grassroots basis, that's our party. Because we are in small communities, we are about the communities that we represent. So there is some variations that are throughout, and of course with all of us you're going to see, yes, we're pro-LNG, yes, we're pro-pipelines, yes, we're pro-forestry. That is going to resonate with a lot of different parties. But what makes us different is right at the grassroots-based level. So thank you.
Yes, thanks. And we do in many directions shoot for the exact same thing. You know, and that's a good question, Ben, and I've been asked that question as well before. You know, so there is only one, I guess, and it's not much of a difference. We have free votes. Our party has always had free votes. We have very open discussion. In fact, even in the last term, or sorry, in the last session of the legislature, we had a few votes where some of our people, nope, that doesn't work in my riding. So we have free votes as well. You know, the ICBC, we have committed to opening up to free competition. I don't think there's a person in this room that ICBC resonates well with, probably, for the most part. Policies. Our policies for our party are developed by its members. Not our members, not our MLAs, but by the party members at convention. All the parties work the same way. We bring our stuff forward, they're voted on, and then they become broader policies. So those can be influenced by people here in this room, either through me or members of the party. Carbon tax. So we are now in $50 a ton as a tax grab. The NDP have raised it from 30 up to 50 in the last 3.5 years, and they've taken it from a revenue neutral, where the carbon tax went back to grants, went back to industries that were innovating, to now it's a tax grab. There are 3 sitting premiers right now in Canada, Jason Kenney, Scott Moe, and Doug Ford. All 3 of them have tried to eliminate the tax. I know it's a good soundbite when I hear Mr. Bolin say that I'm going to eliminate it. Go back to our earlier discussion, having 19 people run. The reality isn't there. What we need to do is roll it back to where it was, make it so it goes back to the people who need it. Up here, we use natural gas probably more than anybody. We heat our homes for 10 months of the year. All right, so we need to have a way that we can apply for that, because people down south don't use it as much as us. So we need to make sure that we can apply for some of those to offset that expense for us. We need to promote industry to innovate, and that's also where that money needs to go. And then we need to influence the federal government to change their policies.
Very good. I will mention that that question was just directed at Mr. Bolin, but that was okay. I'm easy. All right, any more questions from the floor? That's true. Okay, we will go to
Can I ask another one?
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Wall.
This will be for both candidates. What do they know about the forestry proponent, and how could they help this proponent move forward in making things happen in Fort Nelson, and also about the CN rail issues that plague us in Fort Nelson? What do you know about it? And how could you help in a time when there might be some help required?
Okay, who would like to go first?
Yeah, a great question. And, you know, I know the CN is a question up there, yeah. CN is critical for the recovery of Fort Nelson. 100% that rail line must be upgraded and improved if there's going to be economic recovery here in this town. That's 100%. I know the mayor agrees. I've sat with CN. I've met with them at UBCM. I know the mayor has met with them and talked to them. It is absolutely critical. I know the chamber's worked a lot on CN. We have to make sure that that's going to, those improvements are going to happen, or the pellet plant's not going to happen. There's going to be nothing happening without that rail line. So that is number one priority for all of us. BC has a competitive problem. We have lost our competitive edge, and it's been getting worse the last few years between red tape, bad taxation, getting permits, getting to yes. Companies around the world do not want to bring their capital to British Columbia. And we just saw that recently with the rail line that skirted right around British Columbia and is planned for Alaska. There's no reason why that rail line should not be departing here in Fort Nelson and going up through the north. Again, this is a competitive issue. Businesses and companies from outside British Columbia are looking. It's hard to do business in BC. And we need to improve that. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of conversations to make sure that we do improve that. And that is something that we need to do to get, you know, plants like the pellet plant, to get a sawmill up here, along with the other improvements around stumpage, transportation costs, and everything else. So there's a lot of work to do, but there is a direction forward, and we just need to stick to it and fight for it.
Thank you. I have been brought up to speed on that, thanks to the mayor, and thanks to the coalition that has been working on the rail line study, and it's been working on a lot of the forestry and a lot of the oil and gas aspects. What's missing from that, when you've got these great mayors and these great communities that all come together, is a province that's not listening to the information that they're providing. And the coalition has been a strong advocate for getting these reports that are needed. And I've read the reports. I've read all the reports just in the last few days that have been done by Northern Rockies, that have been done by Fort St. John, Mackenzie, all the partners to this coalition. And you know what? We need a government at one point in time, for once, to step forward and say, this works. This approach works. Because when you bring everybody to the table and all stakeholders are at the table, that's when change happens, and that's when you start to see the benefits of the work that the coalition will do as far as the train or rail study and as far as the forestry study. So you know what? It has taken a lot of work to get to this point in time, but the resources are there because of your mayor, because of people in your community. Let's use them. Let's ensure that the stakeholders and the province for once gets on side and says, we can champion with them, for them.
Very good. All right, I shall go back to the questions online. This question has been posed by the chamber, addressed it to both candidates. The tourism industry is one of the hardest hit sectors during COVID-19. What will your party do to support tourism businesses throughout the pandemic? I will let Mr. Bolin go first.
So I was here in August and in September with my boys, with my wife, with our pets. And I phoned in July to the campground you guys have just on the outside of town right here. Triple G, I believe it's called. Phenomenal place. Phoned her in July and I said, listen, we're going to be coming up in August and we're going to be coming back down through in September. Can I pre-book 2 sites? she just kind of chuckled and said, "Don't worry about it, you don't need to, there's nobody else here." Absolutely breaks my heart. I have seen what happens when tourism slows down. And when you've got a place like Fort Nelson, which is very similar even to Dawson Creek right now, where industry hasn't taken off like it may have in other areas, and you rely on tourism, it's heartbreaking to see that go away. One of the first things we did that we pitched to the government was being able to offer people a tax credit for tourism. So whether it was recreational, so if they were going to go to Whistler or Big White or some of the phenomenal recreational properties that or communities that are in BC over the winter, that they could get a tax credit for that. Secondly, was then traveling in our own backyards, was ensuring that we were spending money in communities that mattered. So getting people, instead of it being from California that are coming up, or whether it's Minnesota that are coming up, getting people in the rest of British Columbia to ensure that they're coming up to see it. Because you know what, I hear it all the time. Oh, I always wanted to go to Alaska, or I always wanted to go up to Whitehorse or Watson Lake. Give them a reason to come. Give them a financial benefit to it, and it doesn't even have to be a large tax credit, where I think you find people taking advantage of that. And it's not just during the pandemic, it's not just right now that matters. We're talking next year is going to be just as important as if we did it right now. So I think if we could put together some sort of a credit for tourism versus the funds all going towards one or another, the communities need to benefit. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. You know, tourism is probably one of the hardest hit industries across the province. Fort Nelson, of course, is kind of double hit. Oil and gas has been hurting for a long time. This was you know, Fort Nelson's done quite well with the, you know, embracing tourism in the last couple of years. Even the Northern Lights Festival is a great example of trying to sell Fort Nelson to the world, and that's been great. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out this year due to COVID. But we're hopeful that next year there will be, you know, a full return to it. Economic recovery is important for all of us. We've kind of pushed back. The Premier created an economic development or an economic recovery committee, which was very southern centric. It had, you know, the Vancouver Board of Trade, the Surrey Board of Trade. It had, you know, the BC Chamber was there, but the Vancouver guy, but representing all the chambers. It just didn't have that northern feel and the rural feel, and that was one of our big complaints that we had about that recovery. I know that the tourism industry has been missed a lot. We need to make sure that there is some grants available. One thing that we've committed to is a loan guarantee for emergency financing for the tourism. There's 190,000 different organizations that are impacted right now by the tourism sector. We need to be supporting Tourism BC, so we can get people to come up here. This summer there was a lot of people from BC that came up here that have never been up here before. I talked to a few people that were coming through Fort St. John and heading north doing the loop, and they would never have done that other than with COVID. But that is not paying the bill. We need to make sure that we still have a vibrant tourism sector here in Fort Nelson next year, and we need to support that by getting the businesses through this trying time, which is huge. Another issue, we've been working a lot with the guide outfitters. I know that's been a huge impact here locally. You know, losing, well, I was talking to them tonight. If they continue to have another year like they did this year, there won't be guide outfitters. Guide outfitters bring a lot of revenue to Fort Nelson, and we need to make sure that we're also supporting every aspect of tourism.
Thank you. The floor? I see some movement. All right, I will go back to the questions posted online. I think the next one regards the Fort Nelson BC rail line. I think we've discussed that. Both sides have had a chance to address that. So we'll move to the next one. This one's addressed to Dan. Dan, you have been a strong advocate for us while in opposition. Will you continue to have the same freedom and latitude to advocate for us if the Liberals win? Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Who's anonymous here? Put your hand up. Absolutely, 100%. My commitment has not changed to the residents of Northern Rockies. It has not changed. I made the commitment in 2017 that this is a priority for me. We need to get economic recovery in Fort Nelson. That's been my commitment. That's why I'm up here all the time. That's why I opened an office up here, to support and to work with everybody to try and get our economic recovery. As far as, you know, and I've done this in opposition. I've had the opportunity to meet with ministers and talk with ministers. I've had the opportunity to bring people together with ministers so that we can try and chart a course forward for the best outcomes for Fort Nelson. If we are in government, and so blessed to be in government, that won't change. In fact, it also opens up another avenue to have direct access to the ministers, which I still have, but it's a little easier to pick up a phone for the guy that's sitting a couple doors down from you than it is to making appointments. So it makes it much easier when you're in government to advocate for communities, which is something that I certainly hope I will continue to do. As far as party politics and towing the party line, which I think is kind of what this question's about, it's no different than it is now. We still have a party that has guides that we need to follow. Everything that I'm doing up here advocating for this community will always fall within what I do as an MLA first and foremost, before anything else that I do in Victoria. Every MLA in the province of British Columbia, their number one commitment, even as a minister, is to the people that elected them, or the people that they represent in the riding. That will never change.
Thank you. Next question, going the other way. What is Trevor's plan to get Fort Nelson's economy rolling again?
Thank you. I did touch on it in a few of the different questions, but you know what? It's being a champion for Fort Nelson. In my opening statement, you know, it was touched on how I've done that in Fort St. John, and I've been able to do that as a councillor. And whether that's meetings with ministers, whether that's meetings with industry, whether that's ensuring that new businesses know about us. It's when you're the MLA or even a city councillor, or even the mayor, you automatically assume a role of being their economic development officer, because nothing makes you happier than seeing projects come to the community. So whether it's working with the coalition, as I talked about earlier, working with your mayor, working with your council, working with your businesses, whether it's everybody in Fort Nelson having my cell number, because I'm that kind of a hands-on guy, that's what it's going to take. Because I want to ensure that you're represented and that the rest of British Columbia and the rest of Canada know where Fort Nelson is. Fort Nelson needs to get put back on the map. It should have never come off. It did, but let's get it back. Thank you.
Floor? Questions? All right. We shall go back. Medical. I just missed that. I think that's an important topic. Krista, help me here. Here we go. What will your party do to ensure equitable access to medical services for rural and remote communities? I'll turn this one first to Mr. Davies.
Yeah, it's, again, I talked about it a minute ago. Fort Nelson has been left on the sidelines. I know we were, over the past couple of years, talking to Villers, and, you know, the plan was great to get a Medivac system in place. It's stupid policies that are blocking it. And I think that's the big issue that, you know, we've seen with people here that have been critically ill. I know that there's stories here locally where people have not been able to make it to higher level of care. And they did not make it because they didn't have access to Medivac out of Fort Nelson, or the rules didn't allow for it. I've heard the stories of people here in Fort St. John, or in Fort Nelson, that have had to take things into their own hands to bring someone to Fort St. John. That is not right. Again, we understand that the Fort Nelson Hospital is not going to have a full surgery department, but every single community in BC needs to have equal access. We would never ask someone who lives downtown Vancouver, hey, you need to go to Kelowna to have your baby, and by the way, you're going to have to pay for it, and by the way, there's going to be no reimbursement. It's absurd that this has been going on for this long. It's absurd that I've been, and I'm sure some of you in here have spent time on Hansard watching. I have brought this up in budget debates, meetings. I've sat with all your local government. We know that this is an issue. We need to keep pushing it forward. We need to keep it on the radar, and we need to make sure that Fort Nelson residents have full access to health care like every other British Columbian does, and that is what I'm absolutely committed to fighting for and will continue to fight for.
Thank you. It shouldn't be like this. And I think it's like this, and it's been like this for decades, because the government of the day made it more about regions and less about communities. So all of a sudden, communities lost their voice. And that's what we've seen when it comes to healthcare. Fort St. John's no different. There was a guy yesterday, his wife was having a baby, there was complications. They flew her to Prince George. There was a post made on Facebook. He couldn't get there, they wouldn't bring her home, and he couldn't afford to go. So I ensured that he had the funds he needed to get to Prince George for the birth of his baby and to bring his wife and their brand new baby back with them. And I've seen the stories here, and I've seen the stories everywhere. And honestly, in 12 years of being on city council and the amount of meetings I've had with Northern Health where somebody's walking out of the room because it's just not going the way they wanted it to go, needs to stop. We need to get back to a community-based approach on health done through the health authorities, but not regional. Because when you're trying to run something out of Prince George that needs to represent Fort St. John, Fort Nelson, Terrace, and all of the 73% of the province that they cover, it doesn't work. I have gone to nurses' conventions where I've recruited nurses to come to work for Northern Health. I have made sure that my booth was beside Northern Health, so they had no choice but to ensure that they came truly to the north. That's what needs to happen. If I have to go to every nurses' convention that are held in Calgary annually, and they've got the first year through fourth year that are graduating, that's what we'll do to ensure that our voices as community champions are heard. Thank you.
Moving on. Whoops. Would your government implement clear, certain timelines and practical deliverables to advance permitting and approvals for resource development? Now, this is a question back from the days of Horn River, but it's here, so I shall ask Mr. Bolin first to answer the question about delivering of permitting.
Thank you. Part of the problem we have in British Columbia is the fact that there's too much red tape. And we've seen it in other provinces, governments have changed as well. Part of our Made in BC platform was to ensure that the red tape gets moved. You do not have to give up environment for industry, nor do you have to give up industry for environment. The two can coexist. I have been around the oil industry, the gas industry, the forestry industry, the agricultural industry for my entire life. And I've seen the advancements and the changes that have happened as far as technology's brought on. I remember the first electric drilling rig that came up here from Ensign, Baltic before that, Newmap before that. I've seen them all, and I've seen them all work well. But we need to ensure that the red tape's removed to help progress go forward and help these projects happen. AltaGas in Prince Rupert is a prime example. I was there for their opening. One of the best events I've ever been at because it was a community that ended up with this monstrous project after so long of having nothing. I said to AltaGas, I said, how did you pull this off? I said, nobody even knew this was happening. And they said, that's exactly how. We ensured our homework was done, we ensured our due diligence was done, and we got around the red tape. Companies shouldn't have to try to figure out all these great ways to get around the red tape. We should be removing them where we still respect the environment, where we create jobs and build our economies.
Yeah, it goes back to competition again, something that is absolutely lacking. As far as a commitment, we have a commitment. In fact, we've already announced our commitment as part of our platform for 2020. We will be cutting the time for permitting in half. That is our goal. If you look at a mine right now, you were 10 to 15 years to get a mine. We've looked at different pipeline projects. How many years does it take to get a pipeline project? British Columbians do resource extraction better than any place in the world. There's no one else that does it better. We have strong environmental policies. We have relationships with all the people, including our Indigenous communities. We work hard to make sure that we're doing it right, and we are above and beyond everyone else in the world. But our permitting processing time takes years and years. We need to start cutting some of that red tape that I've mentioned earlier. We need to start emptying out some of the bureaucracy, which at the end of the day is what's blocking a lot of it. All the checks that keeps going through, and then it comes back, and then it goes onto someone's desk on the bottom of the pile, and then it starts over. We got to stop that. We need to start making sure that we are out there attracting investment into BC and getting people working again.
Questions? I'm going to throw in one of my own questions. Sorry, Krista. I'm going to throw out the phrase A2A, Alberta to Alaska, or 7G7. And I'm wondering if each candidate can respond to what their thoughts are on those two acronyms. And for those that aren't familiar with it, A2A refers to the railway, proposed railway from Fort McMurray to Alaska, and 7G7 is a similar proposal by First Nations. I will ask Dan first.
Well, I did mention the Alberta to Alaska Railway, and I think that is something that we need to come through here. I mean, I just imagine the hub that Fort Nelson would become if that railway was through Fort Nelson. We wouldn't be fighting to try and get the railway upgraded because it would absolutely have to be upgraded. Fort Nelson, I think, would be the best place to have that rail line take off because a lot of the infrastructure is already there. And if you look at us geographically, it's pretty easy now to truck on through to Alaska. The Indigenous Railway, I'm not fully aware of that. But any time that we can look at moving product, I think any time that we can look at partnering with our First Nations partners, anything that is going to benefit the economy for people is something that we need to support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mentioned earlier about the coalition of communities and the mayors that represent. They have already commissioned a railway study to be done. This is already in the works as far as a railway study. It's time to take that and it's time to ensure that the province listens because that railway is huge for Fort Nelson. It's huge for Northern Rockies and it's huge for British Columbia. And what's good for British Columbia is good for every British Columbian. So that study that is in works and underway needs to get into the hands of the provincial government so that we can advocate and all of us can advocate, including businesses, to ensure that this gets done. And I don't know, again, I don't know a lot about the 7G7 one, but if it has anything to do with industry, creating jobs, the economy, then yes, it is something else that we need to ensure is considered and that others hear about it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right. This one is addressed to Trevor. Trevor, how will you be able to commit enough of your time to this region when you have such a large business that you're already committed to? Thanks.
It's a good question. What better time to announce my retirement than right now? So, you know what, I do. I own different stores. I am a small business owner. I am a city councillor and I'm a father too, and I only live 3 hours and 45 minutes from here. So may come to a shock to some, but actually I would be retiring from real estate, which I've done for 21 years in Fort St. John. And I would also be retiring from city council, which I've done for over 12 years. So in order to ensure that I am widespread, I would be doing those things. I'm a very fortunate person that has a great team behind me in my businesses. I have a general manager in my stores that is phenomenal. I have a wife that supports me. I have 2 boys that absolutely love being involved in everything I'm involved in. So yes, I love to be busy, but that's what keeps me moving. And knowing that there's items I need to give up or there's parts of my life that I have outgrown in order to do this today, that is the decision that I've made. Thank you.
Nothing response there. If elected, what will you do to prioritize improvements in broadband and cell service to provide affordable broadband to rural residents and communities? Dan.
Yeah, thanks. So this is something that has been worked on, the previous government, the BC Liberal government before, making sure that communities are connected. This is absolutely critical. We've never probably seen more of a need to have internet connectivity to our communities than we are now during COVID. Whether we're looking at kids that are maybe doing lots more online schooling, maybe we're looking at people that are doing commerce, people that are working from home. You know, I mean, these are things that we have never really, you know, they've been around, but we've never really looked at it like the way we are now. This has now become the reality and almost the, well, not almost, this is the normal. So we need to make sure that we are getting broadband spread throughout British Columbia. we still have many areas that, many areas don't even have telephone. We need to make sure that we are getting the resources out there, working with the providers, working with the federal government to make sure that we get all of British Columbia connected so that they can participate in our economy, because that's what it's all about, whether we're talking, again, working from home, commerce, education. It all builds a resilient British Columbia, and we completely support getting that done.
Thank you. As a kid, we had a party line. And I can remember you'd pick up the phone, you couldn't say anything quite quick because you had to listen in to make sure anybody else wasn't talking before you could go ahead and dial those numbers. I couldn't fathom my kids doing that today, because all they do is pick that up and they don't even touch it, they just talk into it and it dials. That needs to be available for everybody. The fact that there's still no cell service in some of the parts of northern BC absolutely blows my mind. Coming up here, cuts in and out. One bar, no bar, no bar. No, it shouldn't exist. Again, we need to ensure that the telecommunication providers are up to speed with all of British Columbia, not just with major metro areas, not with the cities, but everywhere. And that's part of where I feel we've been forgotten. COVID-19, your choice was to put your kids in school or to keep them home if you were concerned. The people that kept them home that live in the rural country, you imagine, or the rural areas in the countries, can you imagine how difficult those online courses are with dial-up? I can't even remember, and nor do I want to remember what dial-up was like, and nobody should have to, because even the noise alone, I can still hear it in my head. But we need to ensure that our telecommunications companies are committed to British Columbia in order to bring this for everywhere. Thank you.
Cancel. We have a question from the floor. Very exciting. Mr. Allen.
Thank you both for coming. Trevor, first time I've met you. Nice to hear you. And Dan, as an incumbent. The A2H was announced by our friend south of the border, Mr. Trump, with very little federal or provincial Canada involved in all of that. So it made me wonder, who the hell's running this place, you know? And it's a direct route that they're going. If I was building a railroad infrastructure, I'd want to go Fort McMurray, High Level, Fort Nelson, Alaska. You'd have 3 end of the rails attaching to a main line, would only make sense. So how much as the government, or if you're elected as government, do you think you can really influence change on that topic?
Well, that's a good point. I found out about it probably when everybody else did in the newspaper, when the media came out with it. Being in opposition, we're not privy to what government does. From the sounds of it, though, I don't think the British Columbia government was even part of the negotiations or the discussions. So moving forward, I completely agree, having where it's coming across, having, basically 3, this being a real hub. I think British Columbia, if we form government, need to be reaching out to the Americans and having this discussion. Why are you doing this? What can we do? How can we move forward? What are the partnerships that we can look at to make this a reality? Again, I think there's so much potential in northern BC. And when I say northern, even north of here. We've got the Golden Triangle, which we've heard lots about transportation issues, connecting our ports, Stewart Port. I mean, there's all these little individual pieces I think that we need to be looking at connecting, which is going to in turn improve the economy, which in turn more jobs, supporting education, healthcare, and all those things that we need.
Thank you very much. Not only was BC, I don't think, up to speed, I don't even think Canada was up to speed, because shortly after that announcement was made, the Prime Minister came out and said that it was something he probably wouldn't be in favor of. So at the end of the day, it's about championing for that project. That project coming into Fort Nelson and going beyond would mean so much more. It would mean that the products that are locally grown and locally made here have an easy access route to get out and be sold. Because you know what, that rail is a huge connection point for more than just that Alberta portion of it or coming up and through. So you know what, I don't think it's how you can do it, it's ensuring you do whatever you can do to make sure that you're heard. And whether that's camped out or locked up or getting drug out by the RCMP, it's ensuring that they hear how much that's needed and the business case of why it makes more sense to bring it this way than the way that they had originally planned. Thank you.
Just to follow up to that, they're already working on it. We've done some work for them already. They're doing alignment studies, they're doing the flying for the alignments. So if any changes are going to be made, they're going to have to be made fairly quickly. Just another question I have. Dan, you said that the Conservatives can't form a government, and I agree with you, they probably won't this time around. It may be in the future, you don't know. But splitting the vote is a major problem, and I don't think it's something that needs to be spoke lightly of. I want to hear from both of you, what will you do and how will you work together if there is a split vote in a minority government?
Mr. Bolin.
Good, thank you, yes, and I mean, it is not to be taken lightly, and I think the facts, not the opinions, are what's important about that. We would vote, I would vote for what best represents people, not parties, not anything other than the fact that that community is being represented. So, you know what, if it's about jobs and economy, if it's about ensuring that our communities are better off and our families are better taken care of, that gets my vote as a yes. If it's about shutting something down or going against what my fundamentals are and what my platforms are, then that's always going to be a no. So you know what, at the end of the day, whatever that motion is, whatever that bill is that gets put forward, depending on how that affects my constituents, is how I would always vote no matter what. So thank you.
Just to follow up on that, you're speaking for yourself, you've got 18 other people running, and you are the leader of that party. How would you have them vote?
Under our party, because we do have a free voice vote, it would be based on that region. So even as a leader, and Dan had mentioned it earlier, the leader of a party still represents their riding. So my riding is still this area. My riding is Fort St. John, my riding is Hudson Hope, my riding is Fort Nelson, Northern Rockies, and up to the border. That is what I represent and who I represent. So my party would still follow the platform based on a better economy, based on more jobs, based on health, safety, community first, because that's the platform that we've heard from our members and that we adopted at our AGM in February in Abbotsford. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree. It is something that does not need to be taken lightly for sure. And you know, I've already talked about how it is a real thing. You know, 2017, we saw what can happen. You know, there was a contract signed between the Green Party and the NDP. That contract that was signed pretty much locked the Green Party to the NDP. In fact, there was not one vote in 3.5 years that the NDP, or that the Green Party went against the NDP, not one. A lot of Green Party members across the province were very upset. They were upset because they elected Green Party people to deliver on some of those issues. And it never came forward because they were locked into a contract. In a minority government situation, they are the most fragile thing in a government. And we've seen it in across Canada. When you have free votes, you are always at risk of making government fall on a confidence vote. And then you're back into an election cycle. Minority governments are very hard to create confidence. That has been part of the problem since 2017. It's hard to get confidence in a minority government, in a province, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how long your government is going to be held together, because all it takes is, you know, on a confidence vote, on a budget vote, a couple people to say no, and you're in an election cycle. Election cycles are hard on economies. They scare people away. This is why, you know, we were very serious. We need a 4-year fixed election date. It has that, you know, fixed and accountability and reliability to the economy. And companies like that. People, when they invest, they want to have something that looks safe. Minority governments are not safe. And companies don't like to invest in that kind of a environment.
Very good. Thank you. Kathy. Mrs. Dickey, please.
Thank you. Question, so it's all kind of wrapped up. So when I was in council a long time ago, well, actually the Liberals were still in power, but we had contingents come and meet with council about the rail to Alaska. Liberals were in power at that time. Nothing came of that. And all of a sudden, when Trump makes that announcement, so it's like it's something brand new. But again, it's been, the council was presented about that quite some time ago. Regardless, the A to A, however that works, there's going to be regulations, there's going to be permitting, that's going to have to be required. Mr. Davies, you talked about cutting red tape in half, but that's to me, that's not a complete answer. I'm looking for something where you're looking at streamlining, you're increasing the efficiencies to ensure that there's a balance between the economic, the environment, and the socio-economic, and the environment. I'm getting a little bit nervous, I'm running on here. But you just say, we're just going to cut it half. Like, that's pretty glib. So can you expand on that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, for sure. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time we try to permit a project. And that's what's happening. Like I say, British Columbia is not new in resource development. We're not new in forestry. It's one of our founding industries in BC. Oil and gas has been around for many years. So when we start, starting over at zero every single time there's a project, there are efficiencies that we can look at there. Electronic filing. You know, right now everything is manual. There's very little electronics, a digital part of this process. We need to catch up and get into the modern era. One of our plans is to make it a complete, all of it digitalized by 2025, which is going to speed up and become more efficient. We repeat the federal government, what the federal government does. BC then comes in and repeats the same stuff. We don't need to be doing that. There are efficiencies that we need to be looking at. The bureaucracy I already talked about. You know, when Michelle Mungle, she was the Minister of Energy and Mines, she was at a conference a year ago, and they were talking about we're going to improve mining. So we've hired a bunch more people in the ministry to oversee these things. That's what scares industry away. Now you've added all these extra checks and balances in place that are already there. We've been doing this for many years. We've been doing it. There is nowhere else that does it better. Yet we keep adding and adding and adding to the process, which just scares everybody off. So when we start looking at, other jurisdictions in North America and look at some of their permitting processes, we need to be looking at best practices, not trying to, we're going to do it the BC way because it's X, Y, Z. We need to be looking at best practices. We've already found there's lots of ways that we can create these efficiencies already. We just need to now put those in place. Thanks for the question.
Very good. All right, back to our questions online. This one's directed to Dan Davies. I think we'll add to this question. Can you explain the difference between you and the federal Liberals? And then I will turn to Mr. Bolin and say, can you explain the difference between you and the federal Conservatives? In 2 minutes.
Only 2 minutes, okay. I'll give you my elevator pitch. There is complete difference. We are a completely different party. The BC Liberal Party is a made-in BC party. The Conservatives are also not affiliated with the federal Conservatives. There's only one party in BC that does have a federal affiliation, that is the NDP. They are all affiliated across the country. The BC Liberal Party was brought in together, including the Social Credit Party of the day, the Conservatives, the Reformers, some Liberals, all brought in to do one thing, and that was to make sure the NDP didn't get voted in. We are a free enterprise party. We are a party that is pro-industry, strong economy, jobs, caring for people. I mean, this is what we need to be doing. And this is who we are as BC Liberals. It's about restoring confidence in British Columbia. It's about rebuilding BC right now. And we hear lots of things that come out of the federal government which we shake our head at. One of those things is the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We are complete proponents and support the Trans Mountain Pipeline because it's good for British Columbia. It's good for Alberta. It's good for Canada. And we need to get behind those projects because it's good for the world as well, to make sure that we are getting our products to the world market using British Columbia ports. And that is something that we are extremely focused on and will continue to do. So as far as being related to the federal Liberal Party, completely different party, not affiliated whatsoever.
Thank you. Yeah, we're like nothing you've ever seen before. The Conservative Party of British Columbia is a standing alone party. We are conservatives at core, so we are fiscal. We do believe in small government, so we're going to have some similarities to that conservative side. Our platforms, as I've mentioned before, are made by us. They're made by British Columbians. They're made by members who care in communities just like this, who want to ensure that they're represented, which is why our platforms cover pipelines and hunting and fishing and ensuring that projects get go-ahead and that red tape is not like it is while we care for all aspects of a project. So we are not like the Liberals, we are not the Conservatives, we are not the NDP, we are not independents. We are strong, we are truly made in BC, and we are the Conservative Party of British Columbia. Thank you.
Oops. Better turn around. All right. Both parties, what is your opinions on inclusivity for LGBTQ, Indigenous minorities, and women in safe workplace environments? Again, in 2 minutes or less. Your turn, sir.
There is no room for discrimination, period. And, that is something that we have always been strong, for. That is something that is my personal belief as well. I've worked in the public sector, I've been a school teacher. It is something that cannot be tolerated. It cannot be tolerated when you hear other people talking about it. You need to act and speak up. It cannot be tolerated in the workplace. You need to act, speak up, and do something. There's no room for discrimination. Doesn't matter what it is, and that is something that I will always speak up for.
Thank you. Both as a party front and as my own personal opinion, should not be, this day and age, discrimination against anybody or anyone. We all have the right in Canada as Canadians to live our lives and to live a safe life with freedom to choose what we want. And that needs to come all around full circle. So once I think we start seeing people that aren't afraid to talk about it, you'll start to see that people are more open to accepting it. And you know what? I think that needs to stand, I think that needs to stay, and that needs to be a motto that people live by to ensure that everybody knows that they're welcome and they're safe and that we are all one. Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor, if your party abolished the we kind of did this one, abolished the carbon tax, what then is stopping the federal government from just imposing another one on us?
We did see that happen in Alberta, where Alberta actually, Jason, got a majority government. They did scrap the carbon tax that was there. The issue that we're faced with is that the federal government, in talking of increasing this again, has become too used to these general revenue funds. The carbon tax has done absolutely nothing to reduce GHGs. We know there's opportunities for us to reduce GHGs that aren't going to cost that kind of money, and they could be done at a local level. For me, you know what? No, we won't be able to do it in order to have 18 out of 87 candidates, no matter how many of us get elected. But it is something that we need to know that it's not required. I own a gas station, and to see people come in and the amount of taxes, including carbon tax, that they pay every time they fill up their car, whether it's $20 because that's all they can afford or whether they're filling it up for work, we pay an enormous amount of taxes on fuel. Carbon tax right now at 9 cents a liter, take that out immediately and find out what your gas prices would be. Right here, you drop 9 cents right off the get-go. And you know what, families shouldn't have to decide, and that's why we've been so against carbon tax. We have families in British Columbia, whether they're here in Fort Nelson, in Fort St. John, in Dawson Creek, in Prince Rupert, doesn't matter, that they're deciding to pay a gas bill or a hydro bill. They're going to pay rent or buy extra groceries, and that is not the way that we should be living in British Columbia. So that is why my core belief has always been against that tax, even prior to owning a gas station. So thank you.
What carbon tax means is I consumed 97 cents worth of natural gas last month in my home, and my tax on that 97 cents was $5.97, or $5.60. So I think that's what we're all speaking to here. All right. Well, this is a juicy one. Let's see. We all okay to keep going with questions? Maybe we'll give you 3 minutes on this one. Contrast your party's platform with the platform of the other candidate. So, Mr. Bolin, contrast your party's platform, in other words, why should we vote for you versus him?
Okay. I don't know Dan's platform, so I'm not going to speak to that because I don't believe that that's my place. Our platform is easy. We've literally taken every aspect that we've heard from our members across British Columbia and formed them into our platform. February 2020 was our latest revision, as well as our policies. From that point in time, it became about current issues. So it became about the ICBC issue, which we brought out in 2018 as far as allowing competition for auto insurance in the province of British Columbia. We brought out removing the red tape. We brought out championing for areas. We brought out being about the people, not being about the politics. In our recovery plan that we had introduced during the start of COVID was about helping families, not helping the wealthy get wealthier, as we've seen during COVID has happened. We see it in the news all the time. It was ensuring that those of smaller incomes, low income, middle income were taken care of. It was ensuring that we looked at what tax thresholds would help keep more money in their pocket, what tax credits would get them spending money in other communities. What could we do to bring manufacturing back to British Columbia? What could we do to ensure that we are back on top of being the world's largest producer of natural resources? So it wasn't about how much money we were going to give. It wasn't about how much in debt we were going to go. It was about getting back to brass tacks and making sure that we were building British Columbia, COVID or after COVID. And that's where we've continued to roll out our new platforms for any of the economy and issues that we've been in, especially since March, since COVID's hit, and we've seen the devastation of communities and businesses. So those are my platforms, those are what resonate with me, and those are what we've been hearing from communities across BC that resonate with them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So as far as platform goes, I mean, first of all, I'm going to start, I'm a local guy as well, born and raised in Fort St. John. A lot of this is going to be, I hope you put your confidence in me on what I've done so far and how I've represented you as your MLA for the last 3.5 years. As far as platform, there obviously are some differences. Our costed platform, so that has a plan to get us, first of all, spending some money right now, because we are in a huge economic turmoil right now, and we all know that. Getting us back onto a balanced budget within 5 years, I think is important to have that goal set up. We've got our plan to open ICBC up to free market. We have a plan to support seniors. Okay, $1 billion in seniors investment in BC over the next 5 years. The biggest part of that, though, is aging at home, and I think that is the biggest piece that we all want to see, and that's what we've been hearing. People want to age at home as long as they can. So we need to make sure that we can support them, and that we're also going to be looking at a $7,000 credit to help you age at home and support people at home. Addiction support, full wraparound support for people in addictions, not just giving them needles. We know that doesn't work. That's one step. We need to make sure that they have the support from right to their full recovery so that they can be a contributing member of our society. Wildlife management based on science. That is a huge thing that we haven't been able to do, is based on science. We need to make sure all the decisions are based on science, whether we're talking how we manage hunting to predator management. It must be done in science, not based on emotions, and that is a huge piece. I've already talked about streamlining the process for permitting, support for the ag industry. A couple of things we're going to be looking at is Bill 15 and Bill 52 that was brought up last year is really an attack on farmers. It's taking farmers' rights away to bring their daughters and their children onto the farmland so that they can take over, and we'll be making sure that we do change that. Supporting healthcare, supporting education. Am I out of time?
Yes.
I thought we had 3 minutes on this one.
Yeah, well, okay.
Didn't you say 3 minutes?
I did.
Okay, good. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we're looking at, and one as well is we have committed to eliminating the PST for 1 year, and then 3 years after that until we're recovered on the economy. And that is going to impact every single British Columbian, putting more money, and up here it's roughly about $2,000 more per family that you're going to have to spend in that small business. The money that you're going to spend in that small business is what is important for us to support small business. There's right now a threat that 30% of small businesses in British Columbia are not going to make it. We need to be throwing as much support to small business as we can, and giving, pushing people to go spend more money and putting more money in their pocket on savings of PST, especially some of us that are located closer to the Alberta border. We already seen, even here in Fort Nelson, people do a day trip to Grand Prairie or a weekend to Grand Prairie to save the PST. Let's keep those dollars here. And it's all about promoting and sparking our economy, getting it back going. Thanks.
Very good, thanks. All right, next question. We are going to 8:45. The time now is 8:35, so we have about 10 more minutes for questions. Can we have a commitment on getting a review of how WCB treats injured workers and having local treatment instead of being shipped out and treated like criminals? A little harsh, but Mr. Davies, your turn.
Yeah, as the MLA for the past 3.5 years, I would say WCB issues are certainly probably, and I'm sure Kim would agree, in the top 10 complaints that we get, maybe even the top 5. We get a massive amount of issues around WorkSafe BC. We need to review WorkSafe, well, we need to look at the review that was just done on WorkSafe BC and start looking at how do we implement a lot of the changes and recommendations that are in there. And one of the recommendations is very, very simple. Putting the worker first. Putting the worker first. If you can imagine that that is a recommendation to WCB. So this is something that we need to start looking at. How do we improve WorkSafe so that it is about the worker? And one of the things that, you know, that is really difficult for me and my office up here to work forward, WorkSafe is distanced from government. It is very hard to get any change because they are almost their own world, if you will. And it's been very difficult to try and get anything changed. We need to make sure that we are driving policy, we are implementing some of the recommendations out of a recent report that, again, puts the worker at the forefront. And I think that is the biggest thing that we need to make sure that we're doing, putting the worker first. It's that simple.
Mr. Bolin.
Thank you. They asked about healthcare, though, tied into WCB, correct?
Yes.
Could you ask the question for me again, sorry?
Can we have a commitment on getting a review of how WCB treats injured workers and having local treatment instead of being shipped out and treated like criminal?
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, no, I mean, you need to ensure that any bodies of government or any bodies that are operating in the British Columbia have reviews done. So if there's issues and there's complaints, then WCB needs to be reviewed. Those policies and those procedures need to be reviewed. As far as the getting the health services from an accident or from something that is required under WCB, again, it comes back to community health. It comes back to ensuring that communities have what they need to get that done, and getting away from this regional model and making the health in this area about Fort Nelson people, and making it in Fort St. John about Fort St. John people, and ensuring that that voice travels loud and travels clear to make those changes. Thank you.
All right. How will you and your party, if elected, support the BC forestry sector? Mr. Bolin.
Thank you. So we did touch on this briefly, and I mentioned about, you know, the OSB mill in Fort St. John. Forestry in its entirety needs to be updated. The program needs to be enhanced. We need to be looking at finished products that we can sell right here in British Columbia. We need to stop the export of raw logs because that has not worked for us. It's created jobs that were not sustainable, and it created an industry that was no longer sustainable. So let's look at finished products. Let's look at a stumpage rate that is maybe comparable, maybe even an advantage over top of some of our neighbors that look at theirs monthly, while we still look at ours towards semi-annually and an annual update. That needs to change. So I think when we do this and the world sees that we take this industry as serious as they do, then you're going to start finding that they're going to reinvest their money. They're going to open back up mills. They're going to put people back to work. I absolutely hate driving by the OSB mill in Fort St. John and seeing that mill closed after 23 years and seeing it dark. It drives me nuts knowing that OSB right now is at $44 a sheet. I was buying it a year and a half ago at $6.50. So there's a ton of money to be made. And from that ton of money to be made, there's a ton of jobs to be had, and there's a ton of an industry that we can thrive and we can bring back what is one of BC's oldest industries to the forefront of our province on a national and global level. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And we have talked a little bit about it already, but, stumpage fees, we've talked about modernizing forest practices. Before I got elected and talking to Leonard and Ben and a few others that brought me up to speed on what the forest industry is, it is a very complicated machine with lots of moving pieces, and a lot of those pieces, they work in silos. We really need to modernize the forest industry at the top levels and how that works. So everyone's talking and communicating back and forth within those different silos. Softwood lumber agreement still isn't settled. That is a big issue that we need to make sure that we are continually working towards. Silviculture, we need to make sure that that is forefront. We also need to be making sure, and I think I mentioned this earlier, value added. We need to be doing more value added, whether we're looking at beams. Dawson Creek has a siding plant. How do we create and do as much stuff here in British Columbia to sell that product to the rest of the world? And those are the supports that we need to make sure that we are pushing in place. But I think a lot of that has to all start, again, by looking at how our forest practices are done at the ministry level, all the pricing branch, how it's not connected to, all of these other pieces all work independently. And at the end, you get bad results, and we got to make sure that we fix that.
Very good. Any questions from the floor as we start to wind down in the questions? Okay. I'm trying to be selective here, if I may. Here's an interesting one that's not often talked on. In regards to hunting, are you in favor of supporting an LEH moose hunt for non-residents of the region, with local still being able to just buy a tag? I'm not a hunter. LEH? Oh, duh. Okay, sorry. Limited entry license for a moose hunt for non-residents of the region, with locals still being able to justify a tag. This is a quick one. Dan?
Is that up here? No.
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
further down.
I absolutely, we need to, again, have a good plan for wildlife management. Anybody who is a hunter, anybody who works in these multiple industries that are working around wildlife, understand that I think we need to do wildlife management better in British Columbia. It hasn't been done. It wasn't done by our government previously. It hasn't been done by the government that we have now. We need to make sure that the proper funding is in place, guaranteed funding all the time in place. We need to fund more biologists. We need to make sure it's all science-based, the decisions that we make. We hear lots of talk around the cow-calf moose hunt that is being used as a predator management, a reverse predator management technique. It was tried in the past. It does not work. We understand that we need to start looking at doing our wildlife management better. We need to look at predator management better. Moose numbers are down. We need to be looking at how we're managing moose populations, whether it's through limited entry or our resident hunters. But I guess to the question, I think we need to certainly support as much as possible as our resident hunters as we can. We need to be having these partnerships also with the guide outfitters working, because that is an industry. That is an important industry here in Fort Nelson as well. And so there needs to be communication, there needs to be a strategy thought forward on that.
Very good. Mr. Bolin?
Thank you. Government shouldn't tell people what they should do without listening to them first. So if an issue in an area such as Fort Nelson, Northern Rockies, north of here, Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, into Prince George, even into the Kootenays, if there's an issue that is facing people as far as limited entry draws and non-resident hunters that needs to be brought to the government needs to ensure that they can rely on professionals to make decisions. When we see government not listening to people and listening to special interest groups to make decisions, that's the trouble we've been in. The other problem we've got right now is that none of the tag revenues actually go to supporting the industry. They don't go to supporting the environment. They are used as a general revenue catchphrase. Those funds for anything and everything related to tags and licenses need to go back to protecting, enhancing, and furthering that part of the industry, whether it's limited entry, whether it's fishing in our watersheds, whether it's protecting things that we need to protect. But to stop telling people what they should do and start asking them what they need to do, and then get the advice of the scientists, the professionals, the guides, the outfitters that know this. And let's not pretend that the government knows what they're doing. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll do one last question unless there's anything on the floor. This is a fun one. What makes a quality MLA, member of the legislature, in the eyes of your parties? So, first, Mr. Bolin.
Thank you. A quality MLA in the eyes of my party and me would be someone who listens. It would be somebody who is not about talking first and believing that their policy or their platform is the end-all be-all to meet their constituents' needs. It is about ensuring that all of the stakeholders in a community are engaged, whether it's businesses, whether it's First Nations, whether it's communities, whether it's local governments, whether it's regional districts. I think somewhere along the lines is the government forgot they need to listen. They forgot that they need to involve the people when they make changes. They've come out with this end-all be-all that they'll tell you how it should be, or they'll tell you what needs to be done. And I think that's where we've gone so wrong in British Columbia and so wrong in Canada, by them not listening. So, I think what makes a good MLA is somebody who's going to listen, who's somebody who's going to act. It is somebody who's going to ensure that you're represented at a local level, whether it's picking up the phone, whether it's an email, whether it's running to you in the grocery store. It's about your neighbors, it's about your families, and it's about ensuring that the true champion for that is all of us together, not a community chasing their MLA, not an MLA doing it alone. It's being together and going after what that community needs. Thank you.
Number one job of an MLA, again, as I said earlier, is to represent you. And I keep coming back to that. There is no other important thing that any MLA can do other than represent the riding that they are elected into. Victoria, that's a whole nother world. But it's an important world as well. We need to make sure that we are in front of ministers. We need to make sure that we're bringing the concerns of the residents. And this riding, even Peace River North, is a diverse riding. 176,000 square kilometers. Things are different here as they are in Toad River, as they are in Fort St. John. So I think a commitment, outreach, making sure that we are treating each part of the riding differently, we are listening to each part of the riding differently, and we're bringing those concerns forward to government. That is what I have committed to you. Again, I'm up here often, and that still remains my number one commitment, to make sure that I am bringing Fort Nelson concerns forward to government, making sure that I'm bringing Fort St. John concerns to government. Again, they are very different, but they all start with the one thing, and that's my commitment to you, my commitment that I will listen, and my commitment that I will bring your concerns and issues to Victoria, as I've done in the last 3.5 years. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. We will now close the floor to questions and ask the candidates for their closing statements. Each candidate will have 4 minutes in the reverse order from when they started. So speaking first will be Trevor Bolin, 4 minutes.
Thank you. I promise I won't take all 4 minutes. I really appreciate the Chamber, of course, our moderator, Northern Rockies, BC Northern Real Estate Board, the Phoenix Theatre, the Fort Nelson News, and of course the traditional territory of the Fort Nelson First Nations for hosting us, having us, for all of you sticking it out with us. I know these aren't always the fun thing to do on a Thursday night, and of course all of our online viewers who submitted questions. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. This gives us an opportunity to ensure that people are paying attention, that the government's paying attention. And no matter who it is that's on top of the stage or going through a debate, it needs to be about the people and answering what they've done, what they're going to do, and what is going to represent them the best. But it's listening first, as we talked about. I don't own your vote. No party owns your vote. No candidate owns your vote. Your vote is your voice, and it's your choice. However you make that vote, it's going to be somebody who represents you for the next 4 years, who represents Fort Nelson for the next 4 years, and this entire region, including the Peace River North. British Columbians certainly have a difficult choice ahead of them. It was not an election that I think anybody was planning for or that anybody wanted to get involved in this early in the game. There's so much going on, not only in British Columbia, in Canada, but globally right now. And we need a sense of security. We need a sense that someone's listening. We need to know that somebody has your back. On October 24th, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that you can sit back and you can know that I have your back, that your best interests are on my forefront, and that I'm going to bring those and that message, whether it's about growing jobs or growing the economy, whether it's about ensuring that you're protected, you're heard, or Fort Nelson's back on the map, the same as it is in Fort St. John. Our communities in this northern part of the region are not that much different. And I think by coming together, as I mentioned earlier, as we've seen the coalition do, I think that we can have an enormous voice that they're going to hear us all across Canada. They're going to know that we are not going to put up with the way that it's always been. Times are changing, people's needs are changing, our government needs to change. So thanks again, thanks to everybody who pulled this off, and have a fantastic night.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Chamber, as well, for organizing tonight. And again, extremely important. This election is extremely important on October 24th, as well as the advance polls that will be coming up as well. I do want to thank all of you here tonight, and there's quite a few of you here, and the folks out in Zoom or Facebook land, I want to thank them for joining us as well. We have a plan to get the economy back on the road. We need to get the economy back on the road. Our families depend on it. Our future depends on it. Again, I have 2 kids. I want nothing more than my kids to stay up in this area, but they need something that is going to keep them up here, and that is one of the things that I'm devoted for all of us. On the election night, we are counting on the BC Liberals forming government. Our families, again, are looking forward to it and hoping that we can form government. We have a great caliber of candidates running across the province, and we are looking forward to doing just that. There was one question up here I just wanted to touch on as I close, and that's the LNG industry. And we didn't talk a lot about the LNG industry tonight. The LNG industry is still a very, very real industry. We know the world wants this energy. India and China, as they are trying to get off of dirty coal. We know that it's important. LNG, Andrew Wilkinson was just in Kitimat yesterday announcing his support for another LNG facility in Kitimat. As we start getting a couple more of these LNG facilities online, the Horn River becomes attractive again. And that is a commitment that we need to make. We have some movement on the forestry, which is great. We have a little bit of movement on the natural gas here with the small LNG facility, but we need some big commitments that people are going to use the gas. And I think the Horn is something that we need to get back to. Again, I'm committed to all of you like I was in 2017. My commitment then was to make, to work and continue to work to make sure that the economy here in Fort Nelson improved. I'm not done yet. We still have some work to do. I am still committed to making sure that that happens. This is about a competitive problem. We need to change that. We need to make BC competitive again. And again, it's something that I am completely committed to, working with all of you, working with the residents of Fort Nelson. And again, one thing I know is you guys are willing to fight like hell for your community, and I'm willing to fight there along with you. And that is my commitment to each and every one of you. So on October 24th, or the advance polls that start right away, I do ask for your support for re-election as your MLA for Peace River North and Northern Rockies. Please reach out to me, dan.davies@bcliberals.com, if you have any questions. I do answer that email. That goes to my personal email. Call my office. I'm pretty easy to track down. Google my name. You can find me. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate this evening.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. That was a wonderful evening, and we'd like to thank
all Dan and Trevor for their participation and their commitment to the Peace River North electoral district. This adjourns the All Candidates Forum. A reminder, if you'd like to speak with the candidates in the lobby, please wear a mask if physical distancing isn't possible. Thank you to the Northern BC Real Estate Board, the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, the Phoenix Theatre, and Fort Nelson News. As well, thank you to the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce and the other volunteers helping us out tonight. Yunus Burhim is here, and he is the newest Chamber of Commerce employee, giving advice and help with small business. Reach out to him if you have questions and you're a business person, and Krista Vanderstein with the Northern Rockies. Voting in Fort Nelson will take place at the Lamplighters Seniors Hall. It actually commenced this morning. Advance voting is from October 15th, today, to Sunday, October 18th, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I urge you to... Sit down. No, I'll stick it. 8 a.m. General Election Day is Saturday, October 24th. So important to know, advance polling in Fort Nelson, Northern Rockies, is today till Sunday, while in Fort St. John it goes through next week. So we have 4 days. So get out and vote. I just want to remind you all, we are in the traditional lands of the Fort Nelson First Nations. The Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, this is my little pet phrase, is the largest civic community in all of North America. There is no city or town or municipality that is as large as we are, so we should be proud of that. Today, the Chamber Board was in a meeting with certain individuals, and there was exciting things to come. I can't say what they are, but we have waited patiently, and we will be rewarded soon. Thank you to everyone who joined us here virtually. The live stream will be shared to the Fort Nelson Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel, so you can reach out and watch this on YouTube as well. And this brings an end to it. Anything else I should thank? Looking at the boss here. No. And thank you to Bev for, of course, setting all this up. So thanks, guys. It was great. Good luck to both of you. And may the best man win. And thank you all for coming. Okay. Ha!